We had a very good recover from in terms of water from the 2017 vintage that was very dry. So we finally had a winter between 17 and 18 with a lot of water, few snowfalls, and this was very good to restore water in the soil.
Was there a good amount of snow in the winter?
Yeah, exactly. So we had a few snowfalls during the winter, and then between winter and spring, temperature were quite in the average, not so high, and we had a spring characterized by many rainfalls. So the soil was very dry from the previous vintage, and with this spring, we restored quite well the water balance in the soil. That went very good for the bud break period that happened in 2018 in regular timing. And so then the vegetation could grow very, very well and healthy until the summer, where 2018 has been characterized with a mid normal summer with few weeks of very hot sun. The sun and the light was very, very high in some days. So we could define this vintage as classic with no any hydric stress or not so much dryness and sun. So the crop was very healthy and good, but not so easy to manage because in the summer there was few days with very high hot and sun, and others with rain and also some heavy rainstorms. And it was quite difficult to manage for the disease, to control the disease in the vineyards. So that required a few more treatments and a few more hours of work. But despite this, also with in the summer with a little bit of thinning in quite every varieties, we reach a very good balance in all the grapes. Barolo, being such a delicate variety, wasn't that much production on the plants. So it was more regular compared to Barbera and Dolcetto, for instance. We had to work a little bit more on thinning on Dolcetto compared to Nebbiolo.
Okay.
Nebbiolo,
let me stop you there for just a second. I want to give us over to Dr. Luca Monchiero. Luca, tell me about your experience, because you have vineyards in Castiglione Falletto primarily, as well as La Mora. What was the harvest like? Was this a typical harvest? Was it a little bit later than normal? Was it earlier than normal? What was the size of the crop?
The harvest started in a dry period in our cellar, but quite soon became a really rainy period. We had to stop for some days the harvest because we had some really strong storm during the beginning. It was October, at the beginning of October.
Were these hailstorms or?
Sorry?
You said storms. Were they hail or was it just rain? Or?
It was just a storm with water only.
Okay, all right.
But anyway, we were expecting for early harvest. We were ready for an early harvest, but we had this strong storm, and so we arrived to harvest quite late at the half of October.
Okay. And what was the size of the crop? Was it a normal size crop? Was it a little bit smaller than normal, or?
Not in
Okay, here we are.
okay, Tom, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We lost you for a sec.
Go ahead. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, I said the crop has been quite normal, and in some area, the well exposed, we had a little thin crop, but the quality was really good.
Okay. Claudio, tell me about, you have vineyards in several different locations. You're in Monforte, Barolo, Castiglione Falletto. How did the wines turn out in 2018? We'll talk about the specific wines in just a minute, but in terms of acidity, in terms of ripeness, in terms of tannin, tell us about the 2018 Barolo.
2018, Tom, I'm sorry, but my English is very bad. You know, is my English. Okay, is the 18 is a traditional vintage, but is the time is very is the normal, is going harvest in the normal time, is the second or the third week the October. But the wine is more fine. If you compare 18 is more power, is more strong here. 18 is more, for me, is more approachable wine, is drinkable wine. It's perfect for drink, for age, for 20, 25 years, aging very well.
Okay. Go ahead.
For 40 or more. I prefer to leave it.
And was able to taste your wines that we're going to talk about today. They remind me a little bit of 2012. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think is near to 12, exactly, or 11. 11 is a little bit more. Maybe it's a 12. Yes.
Sir, could you repeat that? I'm having a little trouble hearing you with the microphone.
Okay.
Di provare a ripeterglielo.
You listen me? You listen me?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, no, it's very near. It's very near to 12. I think it's a 12 or 18. I think is very near vintage. Okay, it's different sweater, but it's very near. In the character of the wine is very near.
Okay.
It's similar.
How long do you expect some of these wines to age? I mean, I'm looking at 10, 12, 15 years, not super long, but
20, 25 years aging well. Sometimes it is vintage, there is a surprise. It's possible more long, but 20, 25 years for keep the wine is good.
okay. Let's start talking about the individual wines. We'll start with Sergio Abrigo, and you produce one Barolo that's from the Rivera vineyard.
Exactly.
Now, this has been a vineyard that has been in demand by many producers over the last 10 years. There have been a number of producers who have bought parcels of Rivera. Tell us about, I'll put up a photo of Rivera here. Of course, we're in the commune of Novello in the far southwestern part of Barolo. Tell us a little bit about, let me first of all put this up.
Yeah, the Rivera Vineyards, it's a quite large area with 170 hectares in total. And it's located under the Novello village.
Okay, you see the map of Barolo here, right?
Exactly, yeah. Going out straight out from Barolo, you cross, you basically cross, if you go towards Monforte, you cross Ravera. It's the hill, it's a slope facing southeast, and it's an elongation of the Terlo Cru, which is under the Barolo Comune.
Okay, I'm going to put up another map here. You'll see where Terlo is. So you can tell us exactly where your vineyards are.
Exactly. We then Ravera is divided in a tiny part under the Barolo village, and then the main part is under the Novello village. So we work our vineyards. It's located in the southeast facing slope, and we have 2 hectares there. It's vineyard. It's a unique block of
Okay.
vineyard.
On this map, where are your vineyards? Are they near Terlo or are they further south?
Well, I don't see any map from the video.
I thought I had it up here. Let me just check in a second. I did my update. How about now?
Okay. So you have to. Okay, the yellow line. It's
Right.
the main road that goes from Barolo to exactly. In the other side, you go towards Monforte. In this, where you are with your mouse, if you go a little bit down and left, there's a small, exactly, a little bit on the red dots.
Okay.
And it's more or less, well, no, it's on the red dots, a slightly bit more left, and up. Okay. It's more or less, it's located there.
Okay. And how many hectares do you own of Rivera?
We have 2 hectares.
Okay.
And it's one single block, has an elongated shape. So it's what we call here as coste or liste.
Liste, okay.
Yeah, it's the shape. It's very long and narrow. So we go as from full south to southeast exposure. So it's very good position because the sun hits early in the morning. So it's easier to control disease, especially in the more difficult vintages.
Okay.
The vintage with more humidity and water.
What's the elevation of your vineyards?
Well, our vineyards is located at 420 meters above the sea level.
All right.
It's the average, but it's quite stable, the altitude, because it's elongated and it's located at the same height.
And how old are these vines?
We have 2. This block is divided mainly into the older parts are plants with over than 40 years old. The second block is younger vines with 25 years old.
Okay.
So we treat them, we tend to treat them differently. So we pick them in different date and we vinify them separate.
Okay.
So, and then we put them in blend just during the aging, promoting the small batches time during the aging. So in those 2 years of aging, we promote a blend of the 2 block, and then the result in bottle is a blend of these 2 parts of vineyards.
Okay. And what was the first vintage you made from Barolo Rivera?
Our first vintage is 2013.
Okay. And I mentioned before, we'll talk about the winemaking in a second here, but I mentioned before that many producers, or several producers, have now purchased land in Rivera. What makes this vineyard so special? I heard that because it's so far southwest, you have a lot of breezes coming in from the Alps, and
Yeah.
is it that, or the elevation? What is it? What makes it so special?
The elevation and the composition of the soils makes Barolo very elegant, and it's very according to the taste, the nowadays taste. So the Barolo are slim but very, very deep. This thanks to the high content of clay in the soil and the cool breeze and the altitude. So this makes Barolo with very floral balsamic tones, always bright acidity, and they show very good, especially in the last years where we see an increase in temperature. So
Okay.
it's probably not very well known from the past because the climate was a little bit different. Nowadays, it's a very good compromise and very always balanced. It doesn't suffer the hot vintages like other sites.
Okay.
So I think this is why today is more interesting than yesterday.
That's what I've heard from other producers as well, that wines from Rivera used to be very tannic, very rough, but they've changed. They're much more elegant now. The tannins are much more round and supple.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, tell us about how you make the wine. You're using large barrels and.
Well, we use large barrels despite they are 10 hectoliters. So it's not that classical, very big cask
Okay.
you used to see in this area, but it's a medium size that allow us to develop and to age like quicker or to give more boost of oxygen into the wine. So for the developing of of the tannins. So that's a very good compromise. And then plus we had one big barrel of 30 hectoliters and plus a few tonneaux. So this is the oak wood we use for aging. It's half. The photo you're sharing is exactly our vineyards. This slope on that goes towards left, it's the oldest part of the vineyards. And then where you see the tractor,
Okay.
is the access to the vineyards.
Okay.
We have the first row just like 100 meters upper than the tractor. So we don't have the vineyards from the street, but we start just upper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And so 24 months spent in oak wood. The oak wood is from 50% from Slavonia and 50 from French. So we keep separate the batch from the vinification. We put them separately in aging, and then we blend finally in after 2 years of aging in the concrete tanks before the bottling. The 2018, this new vintage was bottled in August 2021. So it's going to be ready to be released in next spring, so in few months.
Okay. And how many bottles of this did you make?
We produce around 8,000 bottles of this wine, plus Magnum and 3 liters.
Okay. Sergio, thank you. Let's move over to Luca and Monchiero. Now you're best known for your Barolo from Castiglione Falletto, and we'll have 2 of those today. Let's start off. You make a very successful Barolo del Comune di Castiglione Falletto. Tell us about that. How many different vineyards you work with, or different growers? Or...
Yeah, our estate, the most of our vineyards are in Castiglione Falletto. We have 3 different plots in Castiglione Falletto. We have the Rocca and the Montanello, and then a large part inside Pernanno. It's 3 hectares of in a unique vineyards with different age. We have some vineyards a little bit more younger, around 15 years, and the oldest one is 60 years old. We produce the Comune di Castiglione Falletto totally from these vineyards. So our Comune di Castiglione Falletto is not a blend, is a 100% single cru, but we don't use the name Pernanno. We prefer to use the name of the village, because is what we are looking to express with this wine is our village. So the soil of our village and the characteristic of the village of Castiglione.
And how would you best describe that for someone who doesn't know or wants to know the difference between Castiglione Falletto versus Monforte versus Serralungo or Barolo? What's the style?
Normally, Castiglione Falletto is considered like the melting pot of Barolo, because we have different style, different vineyards, different soil. In Pernanno vineyards, we can consider like our most traditional wine, traditional vineyard. So we have the clay. We have a wine which is always more dark in the flavor, more complex, and many flavor from the earth, from mushroom, those kind of flavor. Never too much fruity, we can say.
I know that in the commune there's a little more sand in some of the vineyards. Is there some sand in the Pernanno vineyard? Or?
In Pernanno, mostly clay.
Mostly clay.
Starts a little bit higher, going closer to the village.
Okay. And then how many bottles of that do you make?
We produce around 5,000 bottles of
5,000 bottles. And the winemaking and the cellar, you're using both large oak, correct?
The vinification is all in stainless steel. We use temperature control, and we do normally a slow vinification with submerged fat, so longer maceration, and then we go directly in the big barrel. We only work with a big barrel, 50 hectoliters.
Okay.
So 1,000 liters.
And then, of course, you also make several single vineyards from Castiglione Falletto. The most famous of which, probably one of the most famous cru in all of the Barolo zone, Rocca di Castiglione. Tell us a little bit about that. How many hectares do you own? Tell us about the soils, about the elevation.
So the Rocca di Castiglione has one of the biggest difference between Rocca and Pernanno is that Rocca is in a windy area. Pernanno is in an area more warm and less windy. The second biggest difference is that Rocca has more sand in the soil. We have sand and we have blue marne, which is another important component of our soil. And then one of the big characteristic of Rocca is that Rocca has historically been a vineyard area there's always been a vineyard. There was Dolcetto 100 years ago, and probably more than 100 years ago. There's always been a vineyard area because it's always been one of the best exposure in Castiglione. It's completely south east. So today we can say one of our hottest vineyards there. But anyway, we have the wind, and it's not so many difficult to control about the heat and the burning. We have more problem of sunburn in Pernanno because we have less wind, and the sun is more stronger in the afternoon in Pernanno.
Okay.
Anyway, one of the characteristics of Rocca is that it's always been more accessible, more easy to drink, more easy to understand, we can say, more fruity, more flavor, and always a little bit more longer and complex.
And the vineyards that you work with, how old are the vines?
We have 3 different plots inside the crew. One is 5 years old, and the other 2 are around 35 and 40 years old.
Okay. And I asked Claudio before, but let me ask you about 2018. What was there a recent vintage that you can compare 2018 with in terms of its drinkability and character? And
I think, as you said, 2012.
okay.
Yeah, we have a really elegant wine, and really ready to drink, which is important for us.
I know in 2012, several producers told me this, thought that was just, some of them had restaurants and that was like, they sold out of that wine so quickly because it was so accessible. It was such a beautiful wine. It wasn't like 13 or 16 that need a long time. So great. Now you have another Barolo that we're featuring today, which is very unusual. It's called Roere, and I'm butchering that. It's Roere di Santa Maria, R-O-E-R-E, and I'll put up a label here, but it's, I understand, now that's in La Mora, so not in Castiglione Falletto, and it's at the far northern end of La Mora. You're almost at Verduno, correct?
Verduno, yeah. But, a part of our vineyards is inside the commune of Verduno.
Okay.
We are exactly on the border. 90% is in La Morra and 10% is in Verduno. It's a really confusing name. Comes from the name comes from the dialect. Roere was a way to say because it was always a humid area, and the car were leaving the sign of the wheels on the street, so that was called Roere in dialect.
Okay, and I really was not familiar with this particular vineyard, and I had to look this up in Masnaghetti's book, which I hope everyone here has. And he, according to him, you're the only producer that bottles.
Yeah, the only one who write the name of the crew on the label. Yeah.
Okay. When I tasted this, I found this to be a little lighter, but beautiful, really pure cherry and strawberry flavor. I found it to be very Burgundian in style. Would you agree with that?
Yes, is our most fruity and expressive when it's young Barolo.
And how many bottles of that do you make?
We are bottling around 2,000 bottles, but potentially is around 5,000.
Okay. Yeah. And when will this be on the market?
Sorry?
When and how many months will this be available?
There will be, I think, around 2,000 bottles. So probably the total production of our importer has always been selling our Roere di Santa Maria. We had the first big review, the first important review in 2004 with this wine in America, and so we started with this wine to sell. in
Okay,
America.
so you do export this outside of Italy. Okay, great. All right, thank you. Claudio, we have several of your wines today. And you're in Monforte, so let's, and you also have wines from Castiglione Falletto and also from Barolo. I see you have a fifth wine there, which I haven't tried, but I recognize the label. Let's start off with the Castellero, which is a cru in Barolo. Tell us a little bit about that particular vineyard.
Yes, is my last part, is the winery, is my last part of the vineyards, is located in Bussia in Monforte d'Alba. This is my my last part of the vineyards. In Bussia, exactly in Bussia, we have 10 hectares, 6 for my Barolo. Bussia in bottle I make 30,000 bottles, 25,000 the regular vintage, the cru Bussia, and 4,000 or 5,000 bottles in the reserve. It's the first part. Is the my Bussia is used for make the reserve. Yes, exactly. Is my Bussia, but this Bussia is a very big zone. But exactly is my Bussia is in Bussia Sottana. Bussia Sottana is the low part of the Bussia.
Okay.
Is the level C is about 250 meter level C. Yes. After the Bussia, we have other 3 small cru, is 1 hectare in Villero, half hectares in Canubi, and about is 7,000 meters square in Castellero. This is my favorite. Is 2 different terroir, but is the Canubi and Castellero is in this part is more sandy. Is the wine is more approachable wine, is more fine, more elegant. Villera and Bussia is more power, is more tannic wine, is more corpus wine. Canubi is my smaller vineyards. It's only half hectares. The total production is 3,000 bottles.
So only 1/2 a hectare. Okay. How many hectares total do you own of Nebbiolo for Barolo?
In total, I have 17 hectares. Is 9 hectares is the Barolo.
Okay. Well, let's start off with the with Canubi. Everyone wants to know about Canubi. That seems to be the most famous vineyard in all of the Barolo zone. So, what is special about Canubi? Tell us about the soils and how old are the vines?
The Canubi is I think is one of the best cru in Barolo area. The Barolo is born in Canubi. Is my vineyards exactly is now is the Canubi is divided in 5 different zones, and my Canubi is located in Canubi Bosques. Is the low part of the Canubi. The soil in Canubi is particular, but is a lot part of the same. And the wine is fine, elegant, is approachable wine.
Okay, here's a map of Canubi. Tell us exactly where your vineyards are.
Dove il tuo vigneto in Canubi?
My vineyards in Canubi is
Bosques.
Canubi Bosques in
The green.
The green part.
Okay.
The green part is different. Is
No, you have to go up.
up.
Okay.
Yes, yes, more up.
Further north.
Yes, about. Yes,
Okay.
it's too much. It's too much. A little bit. Okay.
Close enough. Okay. Prossimo. Okay. And how old are the vines there?
The vines is my father is bought the vineyards Canubi in 1972, and but in this time there is everywhere there is some rows of the Nebbiolo, Dolcetto, white grape. My father is cat and red black. now is replanting 74 and no, 50 anni, 50 years old about.
Okay.
Yes.
And how long, when was the first vintage of Canubi that you produced?
How long to do?
Prima annata.
Oh, okay. My first vintage is, but the first years in my father before 1980 is blend the Canubi, Usia, and the Castiglione. Make only one Barolo. The first vintage, the singular crew is 1980.
Okay.
Is my father decided to make the first one part Busia and one part and the total part of the Canubi.
Okay. And tell us about Vilero. I tasted the two wines yesterday, and of course, Canubi is the one that everybody wants to try and is the most famous, but your Vilero is as good, if not better, a wine. At least I've had that experience over the years, and this 2018 is beautiful. So tell us about Vilero. That's in Castiglione Falletto. See?
Yeah, is the Vilero. The Vilero is in Castiglione Falletto. I have 1 hectares. The production is about 6,000 bottles. Is very old vineyards, but is one part this vineyard is 70 years old. Yes, is very old. Is my Vilero arrived, but I married my wife arrived from Castiglione, and this is the property is the family of my wife.
Okay. And how would you describe the difference in the style of your Vilero Barolo versus your Canubi?
Vilero is more rich, is more complex. For the styling, my cellar is exactly the same, but I make it for making my Barolo. I use it for a very long time in fermentation, 40-day fermentation, all is in spontaneous fermentation, and after aging completely 3 years in botti, in Slavonian oak.
And these are very low. I mean, in some cases, you're talking about 35, even 50 hectoliter cask.
Canubi aging in one bottle is 2,500 liters. The Vilero aging in one bottle is 5,000 liters.
5,000 liters, okay. And now I know the minimum obviously is 18 months, and you all age longer than that, but how long do you age the Canubi and the Vilero in the casks?
Is more what they make, you know. Yeah, is more long. The potentiality is more long than Vilero, is not Canubi. The amazing bottle is 3 years. Is my
3 years.
Completely 3 years, but exactly is possible 33, 34 months. Is my wine, my 18 I'm bottled in December, 1 month ago.
Okay.
Before in December, before I'm bottling is good.
Okay, and you have a fifth wine there. I tried 4 of them, but you have a fifth wine there with the red label, red and white label, and that's the Busia Novanta D. See? Yes, that's the 90 days.
This is the reserve. This is yes, 90-day maturation and 4 years aging, 4 years in wood, 1 year more than the regular group, and another year in the bottom. Exit after 5 years.
And
the market after 5 years.
What vintage is that wine?
16. This is the
16.
new vintage is 16.
Okay. Great. Now we talked about before when we started Sergio, you talked about 2017, how hot and dry it was, and so 18 there was a good amount of snow and moisture, and that the wines were much better balanced. And I know we're talking about 18 today, but everyone I've talked to tells me that 2019, which we'll taste in a year, is going to be a spectacular vintage. Do you agree with that? And any of you can answer this.
Yes, it's 19 is more character. In 19 Barolo is more character, is more tension, is more timing. Yeah, I think it's author 16 or 2010.
Okay.
It's very near to it's very classic and very long potentiality for G.
Sergio, what do you think about the 2019 upcoming vintage?
Well, I completely agree on the potential that could express the 2019 vintage. It's obviously still early, and also, in my opinion, as younger with less experience compared to others, too early to talk. But I feel there's more integrity, more tennis, also analytically talking. So that's, of course, it's a good way to start. And we see a big potential. Let's see in few months if this will be confirmed. But I already heard a lot of rumors, and talking with people around here, they are all happy about 19. So I hope this would come out in great.
Okay, fingers crossed, this is serious. So, right, but Luca,
Yeah.
we have a few minutes left. I don't know if there's any questions from people watching, but we all know that things have been different the last 2 years. What has business been like? Have you been able to sell as much Barolo as normal?
We've been really scary at the beginning of the pandemic period. We were really scared. We were lost without traveling, without meeting, without dinner, and all.
Right.
But I think we had 2 years of increasing in about this, talking about sell. We had a new way. We learned a new way to sell without direct meeting. We had more but we have to say about this about the number of bottles sold. We are really happy.
Good. Good. But I assume you're not seeing too many tourists these days, correct?
2020 has been started really with practically with any kind of visit, but then we had an explosion this year of tourism. This year we had a really high number of tourists.
And I assume they were primarily from Switzerland and Germany and Austria.
Yeah, mostly Italy. We had a lot of Italian, which is really strange for us. We never met so many Italian.
The Italians don't like going to Barolo, or what's?
They discovered Lange.
Okay. Yes. Okay. And Claudio, I understand you have a brand new winery, but how is that working out? You don't have enough tourists to visit the winery.
No,
yes. The tourist in the last summer, this September, October is a lot tourist. Yes, a large part is Italian, but there's some tourists from the country near, Switzerland, German. Yes, it's not more American. It's American just a few.
Oh, I know. I was hoping to be there in about 2 weeks, but I had to cancel my trip. So it's, hopefully maybe in April or May or something like that, but we'll see. But I definitely miss it. But this was great. I thank you, Luca and Sergio and Claudio, for the time to talk about 2018 vintage and your wine. So Buona fortuna, buona vendemmia this year, and let's keep the fingers crossed. I know the last few vintages have been wonderful. Go ahead. Everyone's on a roll in the Barolo zone, so hopefully that can continue in 2022. So thank you again. Okay. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.